Budget and Finance Committee meeting for the City of Franklin for January the 8th, 2015. The first item on the agenda is approval of minutes. Hope everyone's had a chance to look at those. If there's any deletions, approvals, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Second.
Proper motion and a second. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion approves. First and second item on the agenda, actually, is the election of chairman and vice chairman for 2015. I'll entertain a motion.
Since I got here, I spoke with you and asked you if you would be willing to serve another year, and you indicated that you would like to do that, so I move that we choose Alderman Barnhill as chairman.
Second.
Proper motion and a second. Any other nominations? I'll close the nominations. All in favor of that nomination indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Vice chairman. I'll open the floor up for a motion to have a vice chairman for this committee.
I don't know, would one of you like to be the vice chairman?
Are you enjoying your seat?
This one over here, all the way down here?
Vice
You got
Chairman.
a little rest.
Vice Chairman.
That's fine.
All right, I move that we nominate Alderman, whatever.
It's just 17 years. It's not a big deal.
Second.
17 years.
For vice chairman.
Proper motion, is a second? Second.
Yeah, sure, great, awesome.
All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Let me apologize. We have not started real well on the meeting, but with being a little bit strangled, a little bit memory loss there, but we'll get better as we go on.
We're rolling now.
We're rolling now.
We're a year older.
Item 3, update on the TIF district and the industrial development bonds. You're up.
Thank you, Chairman. This is the time of year when we normally bring you information about the tax increment financing district that we have, also known as the McEwen Economic Development District. We always have a lot of questions about this. This is something that's done through the Industrial Development Board. There were some bonds issued to help facilitate landing the Nissan headquarters back in 2005. And the city, through the Industrial Board, was able to acquire the land that was the site for that, for the Nissan headquarters. The mechanism for paying off the purchase of that was through issuance of these industrial bonds, taxable bonds, and they have been paid during the course of this time, really since beginning in 2006, from the incremental tax proceeds of the entire area that's out there. And when I say incremental, there was actually the area that was designated as the district was producing approximately $33,000 in taxes at the time. I'm happy to report that at the end of this next fiscal year, we will have collected $1,087,000 in property taxes, an increase of substantial multiple. The district struggled in its early years, as they are often inclined to do. The first couple of years, of course, there is, during construction of the buildings that are going out there, there's very little increment in the taxes. Even when the buildings are constructed, it takes a while to get them on the tax rolls and to begin collecting the taxes, because there's always a year lag between the time it goes on the tax rolls and the time we're actually able to collect taxes. So we got off to a slow start, and we were not helped in 2008 and 9 when the financial implosion occurred and a lot of construction was deferred. But for the last 3 years, we've been net positive. We've collected more than what the debt service that was required. And we've started to pay back some of the backstop portion that the city advanced during those down years. So there's still an amount, a little excess of $2 million that's owed from the industrial board to the city on this project. But we're whittling down about $500,000 a year in principal at the current rate. That's kind of the good news. That's the overall report. One of the goals of city staff has been to try to find a way to shrink the length of that bond issue. For the last several years, we've been diligently working on trying to figure out a way that we can package that and reduce the term of the bonds. The bonds extend at this point through 2027. Our goal is to get that to shave 5, maybe 6 years off of that, where we can pay them off. Some of the numbers that I supplied you with the packet, this agenda packet, shows that there's a possibility that we could pay this off probably in the 7 to 9 year range. Obviously, if construction occurs more quickly and the construction gets on the tax rolls more quickly than expected, that could shrink even to as little as 5. Just depends on how fast this works. We do have a proposal, the second part of what I wanted to talk about today. And there is no action, by the way, required of you today. This is strictly for information only, and we'll have another presentation at the January 27th work session, where we hope to have the industrial board members here as well to go over a formal proposal. But we think we have a bank proposal now that will convert from the existing format to a direct bank purchase of these bonds at a favorable interest rate. We're still negotiating. We're looking at several different rate structures in the process, but we're trying to come up with a workable proposal. PFM is running the numbers now. They expect to have a proposal even as early as next week, but we're going to put it on the January 27th agenda for you to look at. The timeline on this, just to give you full information, the existing arrangement that we have for a letter of credit that backs up the bonds expires April 1st. So we would need the industrial board to act sometime in February so that we could close the deal with a new bank or the same bank under better conditions by
that
March the
possible?
31st.
Is that possible?
We think so. We do. So I'd be happy to entertain any questions about the district itself. I've given you a lot of numbers. If you want to go through and look at all the different detail of how the different properties have progressed in their payments. But I think it's better to focus on really the sum, the totals at the bottom, where it's gone, again, from a 30,000 range to over $1 million. We're looking at 5 years, that number approaching $2 million a year. And at full build-out, we're still looking at $3 million a year. So the faster that we can arrange to get this paid off, the faster those proceeds can flow to the general fund and be available for all the projects that we have backlogged.
How much more build out? What percentage? How much is built and how much more to be built out in this district? Do you have a percentage?
It's so hard to know because the density could be so different.
Yeah.
For example, we had a certain amount allocated for the property that's going to be the new community college. But because the state owns that will be tax exempt. So that's a subtract. But at the same time, I don't think anyone knew that we'd have an Ovation project that was $700-800 million coming in on the Pickering property. We didn't anticipate that particular property to develop until perhaps even after the TIF district had been finalized. There were some disappointments. For example, over on the west side of the interstate, the Dwell Apartments, the vacant land that is adjacent to that was the first property that we thought would be developed. And of course, it's still sitting there fallow. So, that's why if you ever do a TIF district, you need to make it broad enough, wide enough, to take into consideration all the various things that could happen with development. But we're very fortunate in that it's worked out to a great extent in the manner that we hoped it would.
When I look back on revenue history, rollback taxes, what are they?
Rollback taxes is where, again, the reason that you had these hundreds of acres on the east side of the interstate and only paying $30,000 a year in taxes for what was potentially the most valuable real estate in Middle Tennessee, excuse me, was because they were in the Greenbelt. When the property comes out of the Greenbelt, the assessor can go back and capture 3 years' worth of taxes when it was in the Greenbelt, but it could have been assessed at the true rate. So that is kind of a recapture clause. It is very sporadic in the way that it comes out, because sometimes, Ovation bought that property, 2 years ago? And it stayed in the Greenbelt, I think, for a year before it became commercial, vacant land. Excuse me again. And only now is it going to start being taxed as
At what
full
point,
rate.
do they have to, does that come into effect? I mean, does the building have to be complete? Or at what point do they have to be taxed, not in the Greenbelt?
Well, the answer is different for the Greenbelt than when it goes on the tax rolls. There are some rules about when a property that is in development under construction is able to go on the tax rolls itself. But typically, when changes hands, it automatically goes up to the new level.
Okay.
Unless it's continued to be used as either farmland or forest. So the moment they pull a grading permit and start moving dirt, it's no longer in the Greenbelt.
Okay.
But it does take time to do the paperwork and go back and catch that.
See, because there are certain criteria for being in the Greenbelt, and it's X amount of agricultural product to be produced off of it, something other. So you would think that they would, you would think that relatively no one out there was rolling a bale of hay or anything else as far as that. So you'd have thought that would have come out quicker than that. Any other questions on the TIF district? One thing, this will be on our work session for the 27th of this month. Will not be on next Tuesday night, but on the special call work session board meeting, we will have the TIF discussion will be on the work session for that night.
And we hope to have a more formal proposal on the bank side of this for you at that time.
I just want to say, or have you say, the difference, how much we're paying in interest and then how much principal, because as you say, when it goes from $1 million up to $2 or $3 million, most of that would be paying on principal then. But you've got some numbers in here. If you'd just say those, that would be helpful.
Well, we do have some numbers. We paid an effective rate the first 5 years of about 5% on this because we locked in the rate. At the end of those 5 years, though, the rate converted to a floating rate. Where we're actually paying, if I remember right now, we're paying 27 basis points in interest, but we're paying right at 1% for the letter of credit. And when you add some of the other fees in, we're paying about 1%, 1.5% total on this particular loan there's about $12.3 million left on it. So, you can do the math. If you're only paying 1%, we're paying $120,000, $130,000 total cost a year. If we're taking in $1 million, the entire balance of that is left to apply to principal. I think what Alderman Peterson was saying is, as those numbers go up, virtually all of it will go towards principal, except for whatever interest rates we see in the interim. As far as the eye can see, at least the end of this year and probably well into next year, we're going to continue to be at these bargain basement interest rates. So depending on what we do with this bank proposal, that will change what the interest rate would be.
Any other questions or comments? Let's go to item 3, consideration of resolution 2014-91, a resolution to authorize capital improvements at Cool Springs Conference Center.
I don't believe that you had the resolution because it wasn't ready from legal, but what we'd like to do is to broach with you the subject that the hotel changed hands, the Marriott Hotel, back in July, and you approved that ownership change and all the agreements that went with it. They're in the process of upgrading all of the rooms and the lobby areas and so on. And in conjunction with that, it's time to also refurbish all of the conference center areas. The carpets, the wall coverings, the chairs, the tables, light fixtures. I mean, it's been 15 or so years now. It's time to do it. We've only in that 15-year period done that once. There is money set aside for that. Every month from the proceeds of the conference center, 4% is set aside for the sole purpose of re-upping the design features when the time comes. The new hoteliers are ready to do that. They want to do that in this next calendar year. We thought they would start as early as March and April. Looks like now they're going to wait until a little later in the summer. But what we would like for you to do is to adopt a resolution that authorizes the city administrator to approve those changes as they come through. Again, the money's already allocated, but the new hotel owners would like to have someone at the city sign off on the individual contracts and details, you know, when they buy carpet or when they install fixtures or whatever. And it's going to be a nuisance to keep bringing those individual contracts back with you. It's all going to be coordinated with the work that's being done in their lobby, et cetera.
And
How does the county figure into this then?
The county has delegated to us the authority to do that. And in case I forget later when we talk about the audit, they've also authorized us to go ahead and bid out the audit for the conference center on their behalf too.
money, did they give us money?
The money is retained from the proceeds of the conference center.
Okay.
There's actually $812,000 held in reserve in escrow for this particular purpose.
Well, now, what, this $24,760, is that what we have in hand?
That is a sample request
Well,
from the
they're
new
requesting that
hotel.
much.
Oh, that is a
They're,
sample.
they're requesting that we approve the release of that much from the escrow account so they can go ahead and do that portion of the renovations.
But there's really $812,000 in the escrow account.
Yes, and it's growing every month. That amount grows each month as the proceeds come in.
What in the world can they do for $24,000?
You know, I didn't look at that. Let's see what that is.
Pots.
Interior design services is that one.
Yeah.
And there's another one that is purchasing services for something. Let me see. I'm not sure, $5,000 for the purchasing. Those are the two samples that they sent in of what the paperwork would look like.
Okay.
I move, Mr. Chairman, that we approve this. A city administrator and attorney can approve this capital outlay.
That is a proper motion. Is there a second? I'll second that. All in favor of the recommendation to authorize the city administrator, city attorney to act on behalf of the city of Franklin, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you.
So when does, now, that still needs, will that go to the work session?
That'll go to the voting meeting
Voting
on the
meeting.
27th.
Okay. Item 4, consideration of resolution 2014-90, resolution to revise section E of the purchasing policy for the city of Franklin procurement not pertaining to new construction. All right.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'm Brian Wilcox. I'm your purchasing manager. I don't get to come very often, so when I do, I'll introduce myself and say hello. Today, I say Happy New Year. Section E of the aforementioned purchasing policy is entitled Rejection of Bids. And currently, as it's written, it directs that the purchasing manager shall not accept the bid of a vendor or contractor who is in default on the payment of taxes, licenses, fees, or other monies of whatever nature that may be due the city by the vendor or contractor. As written, this directive is impractical to administer because, first of all, not accepting a bid would require almost immediate access during a bid opening to knowledge of the default. And secondly, a state of default is not something of which any one office or department of the city of Franklin would be aware. Staff recommends that Section E be revised to apply not only to bids, but also to proposals and other submittals received pursuant to a formal procurement solicitation. And secondly, we recommend that the policy be revised to direct the purchasing manager to recommend to you, the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, that it reject any such submittal of a vendor or contractor who is in default whenever the purchasing manager becomes aware of such default. So staff is recommending that the Board of Mayor and Aldermen approve Resolution 2014-90, which revises Section E of the purchasing policy as I've just described.
Well, wasn't that the intent of the statement anyway? Maybe it was a little too much detail, but the intent is this person will be in good standing.
Right.
And I guess without having, you don't always know all those levels of standing unless, what?
Yeah, I think you're exactly right that we're not changing the intent, we're not changing the consequence. What we're clarifying, in my opinion, is that staff will do its dead level best to make you aware whenever we become aware that there is a vendor or contractor who is in default with the city. But asking us not even to consider the bid at the time of bid opening is hard for us to administer. It's just really a clarification.
And I've read through all this, and I know it has to be legal, and it doesn't say anywhere in there about having it, well, in default, to want to say what I don't want to be too detailed about it, but when you say in default, what does that include?
This is not to be confused with the next subject on your agenda, which has to do with...
Maybe that's what I'm talking about.
It does, I think.
Okay, then let's forget it.
Okay.
Forget my question.
We'll come back to that.
Okay. I would move for approval, or do I
I
need to?
second.
Proper
Second.
motion and a second. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Next item on the agenda, consideration of ordinance 2014-38, an ordinance establishing policy for suspension and debarment of vendors and contractors as needed.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to point out that this topic on your agenda is very similar to the one following, and I'm going to take them up and present them to you together as one subject matter. There are two agenda items because there's an ordinance that staff is recommending that would establish policy, and we're also recommending your consideration of a resolution that would establish procedure. Both the policy and the procedure pertain to the same topic of debarment and suspension. In public procurement, the concept of suspension and debarment is well established. Typically, debarment involves excluding a person for cause from consideration for award of contracts, usually for a period of not more than 3 years, while suspension involves excluding a person from consideration for awards of contracts if there's probable cause for debarment, usually for a period significantly shorter than 3 years. Suspension and debarment normally would only apply to procurement which exceeds the threshold for a competitive process involving public advertisement and sealed submittals. In our case, that threshold currently is $25,000. At the December 2013 meeting of the Budget and Finance Committee, staff recommended the committee consider directing staff to prepare for consideration a policy and procedure for suspension and debarment of vendors and contractors as needed. And we engaged the committee in discussion of various topics in order to provide direction to staff. The attached draft ordinance and the accompanying draft resolution establishing debarment and suspension policy and procedures are the result. You should be aware that whenever the pool of eligible competitors is restricted, there is potential adverse financial impact on the city. However, prohibiting non-responsible potential competitors from competing in the first place has the benefit of preventing funds being spent on an unproductive or unsatisfactory procurement award. Therefore, staff recommends the Board of Mayor and Aldermen approve ordinance number 2014-38, which establishes a policy for suspension and debarment of vendors and contractors as needed. And we also recommend approval of resolution 2014-89, which establishes a procedure for the same subject.
Any questions or comments? Let me ask you this. We have discussed in the past where if someone is involved in litigation with the city or whatever, oh no, let's just cut to the chase and say, they're suing us. We don't want to do business. Is that
what this is?
is that in?
That, if you have the ordinance, or maybe I can just refer you to the draft ordinance, section 5-1006 is entitled Causes for Debarment or Suspension.
Okay.
And there are 7 listed, 1 through 7. Number 6, I might point out, is kind of a catch-all. And what it says is, you go through the 1 through 5, and then 6 is any other cause the debarring or suspending official determines to be so serious and compelling as either to affect responsibility as a city contractor or to threaten the public interest or the best interest of the city. So while suing the city is not enumerated as a cause for debarment, I think it's included within this kind of catch-all category of something that would cause us to really wonder whether the relationship is sustainable until at least after the litigation has been resolved.
Or in the best interest of the
Or
citizens.
in the best interest
Yeah.
of the city, right.
Okay.
That's my question.
Okay.
Okay, I have no other.
I'll entertain a motion.
Let me ask one
Go ahead.
question first. Dana, does that suit what the intent of our conversation?
I think so.
was? Well, then I move that we accept this and this recommendation.
Second.
Proper motion and a second. All in favor of this motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Let's go to item 6, consideration of ordinance of resolution 2014-89, a resolution establishing procedure for suspension and debarment. So we've got the policy establishing the suspension. Now we've got the procedure for establishing that. Brian, you probably
Yeah,
covered that.
Yeah,
Did we
did.
do
yeah.
that?
I would
It's a
move for approval
package.
as well. I move for
Okay.
approval.
Okay, you want
I do,
Okay.
and just for your information, the timing of the resolution, the ordinance will then appear on the, for first reading, based on your recommendation today, on January 27. And then the resolution will appear on the same agenda as the second reading of the ordinance, so that the timing of the two go hand in hand.
All right.
Again, these are on the same subject. One is establishing the policy, that's the ordinance. The other is establishing the procedure, that's the resolution. But we ask your consideration of both.
So you
So
made
moved.
second.
Proper motion and a second. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Next item on the agenda, consideration of ordinance 2014-39, an ordinance to amend the FY 2014-2015 budget. You're up.
Happy New Year.
Mr. Chairman, yes. This item was continued from December, and a recommendation is requested from the committee. What this does is, this was the second quarter amendments, and it essentially is done on a cash basis. We used to do it kind of a month or two after the end of a quarter, and now we're trying to actually do it at the end of the quarter end. And what I'd like to do, just maybe briefly, just go over what the 4 items are that are
Okay.
in this. The first one is 3 reclassifications in the BNS department from Inspector 2 to Inspector 3, and the amount on that is $7,500. The second item, and this is a request from Finance, and what this is for potential payroll upgrades based on the Affordable Health Care Act as well as the Kronos project. And what it is, it's one that since we're having to come up with an amount before actually something's been determined, this was basically the amount we came up with. We don't necessarily anticipate it would be this much, but we just want to go ahead and get that amount in place just so we can make any of those potential changes. And for these 2 items, there are amounts in general expenses for contingency that would actually cover both of these amendments. The third and fourth items are out of the facilities tax fund. Back in November, Becky from sanitation had come and spoken about needing the mechanical cranes for the transfer station, and this is the amendment for that request. And the second is, when we actually did a purchase on some pickup truck bed inserts, the amount was slightly over the amount that was budgeted in facilities. So those 2 total requests are $314,000. The fund has $6.5 million in it, so there is sufficient fund balance to cover both of these requests.
Any questions from the committee?
I move that we accept this.
I'll entertain-
Recommend- I'm
Was you
so
asking
moved.
for a motion?
If we could.
Yeah, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved. Oh, let him do it.
Second on Margaret. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
You have your amended budget. Item 8, consideration of contract award to Government Portfolio Advisors LLC of Portland, Oregon in the annual amount of $25,000 for non-discretionary investment advisory services for certain non-pension assets of the city for a term of service of 3 years with 2 options to extend the term of service each time for up to 1 additional year for a maximum possible term of service of 5 years total for the Finance Department, Purchasing Office Procurement Solicitation Number 2015-014, $25,000 budgeted in 110-85520-41500 for fiscal year 2015, contract number 2014-0350.
That was a mouthful.
That was, huh?
Is this still pending?
A recommendation is requested from the committee on this item as well. This is the second advisory contract that we are making for basically non-pension investments. And both of these groups are very well respected in the governmental community. And as you noted, we have $25,000 budgeted. And when we did our evaluation, we would like to recommend Government Portfolio Advisors of an amount of $25,000.
Is this still contingent upon law department approval of the contract? I'm just looking at the recommendation here.
Yeah.
Okay.
It will be, but
Okay.
the contract, we believe, is similar to the one that's in place now,
Okay.
that's been approved.
Move for approval.
Second.
Proper motion and a second. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item 9, budget process update including calendar and goals.
Good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is Michael Walters-Young. I'm your Business Process Improvement Manager. And in prior communities, I've doubled as a budget officer. So guess what I get to do here? I will be taking budget lead on behalf of the Finance Department and for the city in developing the fiscal year 2016 operating and capital budgets. Lori Pope, who is in the audience, wave your hand, Lori. There she is. Will be assisting me, and we together will assist Russ and Mike and Eric, and most importantly, all of you in the creation of what is truly the most important thing I believe you do every year, and that is the creation of the annual operating budget. A budget at its most basic level is a reflection of the values of the community. Where you collect your money from and what you put your money towards reflects the values of our citizens, of our taxpayers, and of our ratepayers. And so as you go through the budget process this year, I encourage you and challenge you to remember that and to think about not just who gets what valued things and what numbers are on the ledger, but certainly how we collect our money and where we're spending it. Our goal is to give you the most accurate financial information possible in the clearest way possible and to answer any and all questions that you may have so that you can accomplish this very difficult task. The prelude being said, there are a couple of changes to this year's budget. Fundamentally, it remains the same. The goals remain the same as they've been in previous years, but there are three sort of process changes. The first is, which we'll talk about in the next item, item 10, we're trying to create a true revenue model for the city of Franklin. You have a copy of that in paper at your places. The idea with this is the diligent work of predecessors of mine and other employees here in the city of Franklin has been able to collect nearly 25 years worth of financial information, of revenues. And so that allows us to do some very good analysis and do 3-year, 5-year, 10-year, and 20-year averages. Our goal is, and we'll talk about exactly the top 10 in the general fund in a moment, but is to do that for all funds. So when we come back to you in April, we're going to use this sort of template. General fund, of course, being the largest and most important, but then every single other fund, hotel, motel, road impact, sanitation, debt service, etc., you'll be able to see those ins and outs and those averages. The second major change is, in years past, departments have come to you with a variety of information, but they've come to you asking for anything or for sort of a total package, what they need and what they want to provide the services that they believe the citizens of Franklin should have on behalf of their department. That spirit does not change. But what we're doing is we're separating it into two components, what we would call a base or level service budget, which is what do you need to perform the exact same level of service next year that you're currently providing this year, and then a program enhancement budget or program enhancement requests. One of the attachments you have looks like this, and it's a one-page form for every new item that they'll be requesting. Could be people, could be equipment, could be capital, could be consultants, could be training, could be whatever. But for all of the new things that are not currently part of the budget in fiscal 15, we will have them fill out and prioritize a program enhancement request. You will get to see all of these. There'll be sum totaled and provided for you in the upcoming months when departments meet with you. But we believe it's a very useful tool to be able to say, this is what they need to continue doing what they're doing now. This is what they would like to have, and of the would like to haves, or perhaps need to haves, it'll be in priority order. So you'll be able to understand what is most important to try to find resources to fund. And then the third major change is sort of the departmental budget layout. You have a sample for the Building and Neighborhood Services Department also in your packets, which looks like this. When you receive your on your online packet, my apologies. When you receive departments in beginning next month, which you will have police, fire, sanitation, environmental services, and parks will be the first 4.
So that'll be in February.
That'll be in February. you will receive multiple items. Number one, all departments will have a PowerPoint that they will give that summarizes their budgets and their requests. You'll receive the program improvement requests, which I just mentioned, summarized. You'll also receive the forecaster data that you're used to. Microsoft Forecaster is our comprehensive forecasting tool that we use, our budget database, if you will, which will have all the numbers. But then you'll have this between 6 and 8, maybe 10-page formatted budget, which will have a budgetary summary, the mission statement of the department if they have one, a budget narrative explaining what they do and what they've done and what they hope to do in fiscal 16, the org chart, staffing, and then the narrative to explain the budget line items, and then a summary of the budget line items, which you will have in Forecaster. By going to this, we're developing Excel workbooks for every department, which they will fill in. It will speed up the end production time of the budget, because this is how the budget will look when Eric submits his formal budget to you come the late April, 1st of May. Yes, ma'am.
No.
Okay.
I'm just
So
sighing.
Russ, that should be really good for you just to look and pull, huh?
Well, what we're aiming for to a great extent is consistency.
Right.
You know, sometimes if you would go through the budget document the last several years, not all the departments look the same. They were put together, you know, they had the same pieces, but not always in the same order.
Format.
You know, this is to have a consistent format so that my staff, so that you, so that the public
It's looking the same.
can get used to it and understand it and go to every department and see essentially what they're looking for.
The final two attachments online for you are last year's budget goals, which we would ask you to review, all members of the board that are in attendance today, to review and see if there's anything that you wish to consider for changes or modifications. And feel free to certainly bring that up in conversation in future meetings, as well as with the city administrator. And then the budget calendar, which we distributed last meeting. I would draw your attention to your next scheduled meeting of February 12th and ask you to consider whether you want to take a vote on that now, if you're comfortable, or consider it and make a decision soon. Traditionally here in Franklin, you have started these meetings earlier when you do budget reviews. I believe 3 o'clock instead of 4. We would advise that again, because we would anticipate that these meetings will take between 2 and 3 hours, most likely, for the next 3 months, each meeting, because of just the sheer weight of material that you'll be considering, as well as the chance for departments really to come in once a year and tell their story to you. But the calendar outlines all the meetings as well as the general process.
So you just got a date, but no time.
Correct.
That's correct.
Calendar
Yeah.
right here.
Where's the calendar?
It's-
Just a minute.
go back.
Just for- Okay, thanks.
I think we had mentioned, Mr. Chairman, that, did we sort of throw around 3 o'clock as a, I think we had everyone here except Alderman McClendon,
If we go down the line, 3 is fine with me.
but, no, we just.
I don't, Dana? is
I
that-
think you were the one not present when we were talking about the 3 o'clock start for the budget hearings.
It's okay.
Okay.
I'll either be stuck at 3 or I'll be stuck at 3 and 4.
4, so
Okay.
it's, so stuck is stuck.
Yeah.
3 o'clock.
Very good. Finally, to let you know, the city administrator did meet with all members of his leadership team on Monday, and we talked about these 3 major changes, as well as introducing the staff, as we've done to you today. The budget manual is in final draft format. It's about 115 pages, which is going out to department heads. We hope it's comprehensive. We know we might miss a few things, and we'll do better next time. But that will go out to those first 4 departments tomorrow, along with their PowerPoints, their worksheets, their Excel workbooks. And then finally on this topic, we have itemized what we believe on this 11 by 17 piece of paper is every deadline and every single component of the City of Franklin budget, and we're at about 1,360 individual steps. So as we go through this year in process, we will keep this as an internal sort of guide to us to make sure that we're keeping up, keeping track, and seeing where we're falling behind on deadlines and what we're meeting. So if you ever want to know or need to know, which I know this item is going to keep you up at night, exactly where we are, just give a holler, and we'll be more than happy to tell you.
Anything else on the budget process update?
The one thing I would add is if you want to talk about the budget goals, we can put that on the January 27th work session and talk about it at that time. So if you get a chance to go back and look at the goals that we brought forward from last year, take a look at it and let Eric or myself know if you want us to put that on that agenda.
A specific goal that we want to address or the overall
Well,
goals?
the goals overall, is there anything that you want to delete, amend? Are there any additions that you want to make for this year? You know, usually there's a tweak or two that we do before it goes into the final form, but we always try to ask the board for their consideration and their comments.
Yeah.
If this is what you're presenting, it looks pretty thorough to me.
Well, I think having an opportunity just as a discussion item for the 27th, so we can
Let's
just
put it
rubber
on there.
stamp it and move on. I
You know,
mean,
we've
no-
had,
no
there's
lingering.
6 of us here, so we know what we're looking at when we look at those. So there's just 2 aldermen that are not here. There may be a comment that, that they want to make at that particular meeting. If I've got any, I'm probably going to get them to you before the meeting. So that'll work out fine. I'd put it on there, put it on for the work session. Probably won't take but a couple of minutes. And, but everybody will have a chance.
Okay, we'll pass that along.
Fair enough.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome, ma'am.
Budget, next item, I'm sorry, do you
Finished with that one.
finished? Okay. Any other questions?
Great job.
Budget presentation, revenue review.
Joining me at the table is Lauren Sullivan, our esteemed Director of Revenue Management.
Esteemed is correct.
Esteemed Director of Revenue Management.
I'm one of those. How many did you say, 17?
All 4 of us here at the table have had a chance actually to work on the summary template and document which you have in front of you. We wanted to take a few minutes and explain each of our sort of roles as well as the overview, kind of look at the template so you have a better idea, and then let you know what will change and how we will modify this presentation once we get to April. Trying to do a revenue forecast in the middle of the year is, of course, an act of what I define as budget alchemy as opposed to budget science. There is far more information that you don't have than a lot of the information you do have. Once you turn the first of the year, you start to get information. Overall growth forecasts for the state have come out only in the last week from places like the State Revenue Board, which will formally do it next week, I think, and economists from the University of Tennessee, Knoxville. But we do have, like I said earlier, we have a lot of data, so we can do trend analysis, and we can also see our collections. So the actual forecasting of revenues as they come in and then where we think we are during the year is Lawrence's bailiwick, and he can certainly give guidance and advice on that. I have helped to create the overall template what you see in front of you based upon successful templates that I've seen or used in previous communities I've worked in. Mike and Steve Sims were essential in providing the historical data to build this model. And Russ, of course, gives the sage guidance as to say sort of what makes sense and what doesn't make sense based upon his many years of service. So our goal is, with everything we do from a budgeting standpoint and a finance standpoint really, is to take very complicated pieces of financial information and boil it down so that everybody understands. Our hope is that we're able to do that with this revenue forecast as well as throughout the budget process. So if you turn to page 2, you will see that there is a summary of the general fund. Now, the general fund is the largest of the city's 12 major funds, and is certainly the most important, size as well as what gets funded out of it. But that being said, it's only one of 12. In fiscal 15, we forecasted $56.13 million to come out of, or to be provided by the general fund. And out of that 55.4% come from what we define as the top 10 revenue sources. Similar to the presentations you've seen in prior years, we have decided to stick with focusing on the top 10 revenue sources. We've added the other 1.1% for you for detail, not because we're going to spend any time really talking about it, but simply because it's important for everything to add up to 100%. So the general outline which we have used, and if you turn to page 3, you can see the template for detail, is to identify and isolate each of the top 10 revenues, one per page. You'll notice there's a theme here. Program enhancement requests, hopefully one per page. Major revenues, one per page. That's an attempt to simplify things. You have a narrative definition of what the local sales tax is, where it comes from, who pays it, major changes perhaps which may be involved in it. You have a graphical representation on the right-hand side up at the top, annual sales tax revenue, and the bar charts. The blue bars are 5 years of actual collections. The yellow bar is what we estimated. And then the green shaded bars are similar to what we've done in years past, which is to have a low, a medium, and a high projection at this point in time. As a general guiding principle, there are some exceptions, and I'll explain in a moment. But as a general guiding principle, we used 1.5, 2.5, 3.5 for low, medium, and high. There are exceptions. This one is one of them. Local sales tax, our low is 2.5, our medium is 4, and our high is 5.5%. This is important because, number one, it's the largest by far single revenue source we have in the community. And number two, it's reflective of very strong growth in sales, the forecasts we have, and where we think it is prudently conservative to forecast the sales tax coming in. Other items vary, but for the most part, they're either 1.5, 2.5, 3.5, or 1, 2, and 3. Grants are level funded at this time as we continue to sort of isolate and figure out what grants we would have available to support general fund operations. But for the most part, we would look at having, if we take the medium forecast, roughly a 2.5% revenue growth in the general fund, or about $1.4 million. That's the good news. The not surprising, and you can call it bad news, is that a lot of that money, of course, will be taken up by expense increases largely out of our control. There are fixed costs which we will have to pay. Debt service is already accounted for in this and will not be on top of this $1.4 million. But there are other fixed costs which we will have to consider.
December for this category is the highest month.
Yes.
We're not in arrears with this, receiving this?
We are. We don't have that information yet.
Oh,
Right.
okay.
Right.
Because
We hope to get November sometime either late this week or next week.
Okay.
We are in practice, we are 2 months behind
That's what I was
in terms of, so the December collection references October, the January references November, the February is what we want to see. We want to see exactly how good or moderate Christmas was, and that we'll know once we get into the month of February.
I have one question, kind of just based on what we're looking at here on the sales tax revenue. It seems to me that this year we are about 8 or 9% above the previous year, but we're right on the budget. So have we been projecting 8%?
Well, similar to what Michael is talking about, when we made a forecast for you last year, I want to say the most current month we had in was February, maybe March. So we knew the first 6 months on an accrual basis, and we forecasted for the remainder of that year. When the numbers actually came in, they were less than what our forecast was, and we applied I want to say, the 4.5% increase that we projected for the FY15 fiscal year, was applied to that forecast, which we did not realize. So our best guess of 4.5%
Really
ended
low,
up
maybe.
being a 5.8% increase when you compare
When
the
we actually got
forecast
the
for
numbers
this
in, I
year
see what you mean.
versus the actual audited number
Okay.
for the year ending June of last year.
Well, I wondered how that worked out because I knew that we definitely are better this year, but we're really, up until the last month we got, we were
Right.
below budget, as I
Right.
recall.
Right.
Okay, I'm just wondering about that. But that's also scary to think that we might have another second half of the year. I don't think we will. Even January, I mean, I can't believe how many people are at the mall and things like that. But as I say, it is a concern, though, because we had planned, and then it turned out that the second half of the year didn't.
What you mentioned is
Didn't move well,
interesting to note, because it's, the best laid plans. If you remember, even though it wasn't so much around here, we had horrible weather in January, February, March of last year. And it just killed the entire eastern seaboard and some of the other areas of the country. So I think there was that lingering news about things are bad, the economy's terrible, and people held back on their spending for several months in that year. And that threw the numbers off. It was hard to recover. The other thing that's very difficult to recover from is December. December's a big
bet.
fat month.
I'll bet.
It's really important to us. And, if you're looking at 6% increases the rest of the year in the soft months, you're probably not going to get 6% in December. It's going to be a little bit less than that. So, that's one of the things we'd like to dig into the data a little deeper and be able to forecast, if possible, even on a month-by-month basis, what the
That'll be
different
interesting.
percentages
That
would
would be
be.
interesting.
We're just not there yet. This is the data
this
we're
could be-
accumulating.
This could be a possibility
Yeah,
of
these are
of doing some of
algorithms we
that.
can build.
So, as I said, this is sort of the general template. When we come back to you in April, we will have you could consider a composite or sort of omnibus revenue presentation, all funds, the best information we have to give you an exact snapshot of the revenues you'd have available citywide.
But you'd have about 8 months of data. You'd have
Except for sales tax, see, sales tax would be 2 months behind.
Right.
well, you'd have, well,
We'd have 8 months of actuals that
Of
we know
actuals.
from the fiscal year, correct. We'd have 10 months of collections, 9 months of collections physically received.
Okay.
But you'd add between 7 and 8. We have an idea, depending upon when in April that presentation occurs. We've discussed internally that, last year and in previous years, meetings have tended to be later on in the month. And so that 2-week window is a difference maker when it comes to giving you another month's worth of collections.
Right.
Because we're meeting on the second Thursday in this case, we won't have that necessarily for the meetings of the 12th of February or March. Whereas if we were meeting on the 26th of February, you actually would. That's not a reason to change your meeting schedule, but that's just a reality, timing-wise, of the picture.
continue.
Like I said, when we come back to you in April, you'll have a broader summary on top of this, so it'll kind of be layered. It's important to have all the funds in front of you, including water and sewer, because when you go to your citizens that you represent, it's important to remind them or to let them know, and for them to be able to see that it doesn't cost $56 million to run the city of Franklin. It costs much closer to $100 million to run the city of Franklin on an annual basis. And again, where we get that money from is important to be able to demonstrate that the property taxes in the city of Franklin make up 9 to 10% of the general fund, but when you add in everything else, it's closer to only 5%, 5 to 6%. And that's an important story to be able to tell and to be able to emulate, but also to be able to reflect upon. We've brought up in the past, I know, and probably will again, because it's in the strategic plan, the idea of revenue diversification. This projection right now, if it holds true, and we think it probably will, shows that the percentage of the sales tax would actually increase rather than decrease. That's not a bad thing, but it does raise a orange warning flag and could push higher for us as financiers, because it means that you're heavily dependent upon one stream of revenue. And you saw what happened during the recession how quickly sales tax can decline.
With that said, can you jump to page 5 and just give us, for me, a little, that's where we talk about the property tax.
Mm-hmm.
And there seemed to be a decreasing, well,
Let's talk about that.
yeah, can we just, since, you know, we know our big source of revenue is the sales, and then this would be number 2. Just go through that a little bit.
And I'll certainly ask Russ and Mike to augment this. Overall property tax collections since fiscal year 2012 have increased year after year, but the draws or the hits against it have also increased. And you can see the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 separate items which say less are sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? Their requirements or hits which have been decided policy-wise to remove from the property tax stream. So the money's being collected, but you are dedicating it to the Industrial Revenue Board, you are dedicating it to the Debt Service Fund, you are dedicating it to uncollectibles, which is an understandable item. That will occur every year.
It's really the debt service. If we've taken the debt service out of the general fund, it used to be until what year? I think 2009, 10 or something like that?
2010, I believe.
Okay. Up until then, the debt service was a part of the general, basically a part of the general fund, or most of it was. So what's happened is our debt service has increased greatly, and now we're using a lot of the property tax to pay debt service as a specific item, as opposed to including it in the general fund, which where it used to be.
Will the less capital projects and less street aid, 500,000,
That's the 3-cent
3%. That's the 3
increase.
cents
Remember,
that you-
when you're looking at the bottom line, you really didn't increase the taxes because the extra is going to a different fund
Right.
and for a different purpose. So from the general fund point of view, there's no recognizable difference. And as the debt service and the other things creep up, that's an issue. One of the things that you've seen too is that a lot of the growth, at least within the last year or so, has been in the TIF district.
Been in what?
In the TIF district, on the east side of the interstate. So although that helps push the property tax number up, it also has to be handed over to the industrial board to pay off those bonds because it's pledged. So I think what you're seeing now is more development outside. Even with the big projects in the TIF district, you've got a whole lot more going on outside the TIF district that's going to help.
So this 2016 forecast, the low, medium, high is based on what? New rooftops, new.
A combination of new rooftops, commercial, personal property. It's a variety.
Because it's not that much increase, but it's some.
This also highlights, it's early on, it's first quarter data. We'll know by April certainly what we have accomplished in 15 because the deadline will have passed for property taxes to have been paid. But also it highlights why it's important that you see all funds.
Right.
Because it's not that the money has disappeared, it's not that the money is not being collected by any means, it's that you've pledged it to other funds. So when you have that other data here, you'll be able to see that $6,659,603 projected and allocated for debt service in fiscal 16 will be on page 36.
Well, it supports when we say, sales tax is keeping our property taxes down, lower, or whatever verbiage we use. And when we get other sources of, visitors coming in and spending money and things like that, creating higher sales tax, that lowers our property taxes.
in certainly the demand on the property tax as a revenue source.
But please look on the debt service there, that third, I guess it's the third line under fiscal year 2015. If you compare that to 2010, it was 2.8 million, and now it's going to, in this current year, it's 6.4 million. So you think about just how much that one piece of it has changed. That has made a huge difference right there, and that's the amount. But on the other side of that, if you also look at paying off the bond that we were talking about earlier for the Industrial Development Board, that is going to be bonanza of what? A minimum of $3 million a year probably, new, that won't have a draw on it anymore. I mean, that Board of Mayor and Alderman then is going to be.
You're leaving a nice legacy
They will
to
be
your
thanking us
successors,
for
that's right.
the sweat.
No, but I mean, it just seems kind of strange that there's going to be that big a difference there, and hopefully it's not going to be that many years from now. But what I'm saying is, we need to be thinking about that. I mean, that's going to be a big change there. It's going to be a bigger change than we've ever had, would you say?
Well, it'll be meaningful. You'll have some new projects that'll focus some demand on that,
But still.
it'll be an interesting jump. I just keep in mind that best case, it's 5 years away.
Yeah.
More likely, it's 7 or 8.
But still,
So-
that's, if you're thinking about it.
It's out there on the
that is
horizon, but
You
it's...
talk about percentage-wise, that is a big jump there, and it does need to be looked at in thinking about what we're taking on and what we will take on in the future. But as I say, whenever you're looking at the debt service now, that has cut a big chunk, much bigger than it was, 5 years ago.
We paying now
It's
for?
more than doubled.
Oh, yeah, much more.
Thank you. I just wanted to kind of get a little conversation on that. Thank you so much.
Any other questions on the revenue review portion of this meeting? If not, then I'll go to agreement with Cartwright Creek for utility billing collection support.
Were you through talking about this?
I am, ma'am.
Well, I'll just say, when I said if there's any more comments, that we didn't close it off before we had a chance to have some more.
Thank you for your time to consider that item. This is the second time I've been before you.
And Cartwright Creek?
I haven't learned yet. I'm taking baby steps. I haven't learned to write headings such as number 8 that you read for 3 minutes earlier. So in the short one, I'll try to draw it out just a little bit to make it worth your time.
Cartwright Creek is enough.
The city of Franklin has about 27,000 water customers, most of whom buy and sell, or excuse me, they buy their water and sewer from us. There are other water districts that provide either or the other service, where we have shared customers. Where we provide the sewer but not the water, we have agreements with customers. It's about 7,000 customers and growing, because it's in one of our growing districts down in the southeast of town. We need help in collecting accounts receivable, and their willingness to help us by managing whether they allow people access to water or not if they're delinquent on their bills. In a very small water environment, we are in the reciprocal of that. In Cartwright Creek and the city of Franklin share about 60 customers, and they've asked us if we'd be willing to help them on a couple of collections, and in doing so, we've set up a formal agreement very similar to that we maintain with Millcroft and with HB&TS and with Mallory Valley, where they support us in that same approach. So this agreement is for us to help, or allows us to, at their request, at Cartwright Creek's request, to work through our policies and procedures to see that someone's delinquent on their account, and we will use the power of our ability to cut off the water to help them collect their receivables, which is a reciprocal agreement that we have in similar situations for about 7,000 customers on our side.
And they've just got 60?
They have 60. They have 2 bad accounts, and we can help them, but we can't do it without board approval of a contract and an agreement with Cartwright Creek.
Do we? get anything for doing this?
We have fees that we charge for
Okay.
doing that. It's added to the bill, and they'll prepay us that same fee. There's a scheduled fee for our service, and it's our water, it's our meter.
Okay.
It's just a customer who pays one bill, doesn't acknowledge the other, and they have no leverage to help them. And-
So they pay their water bill
Yes,
to
sir.
us?
Yes, sir.
They just don't pay the sewer bill?
Yes, sir. And that happens the other
It
direction,
happens the other way, too.
and they help us when we're the sewer provider, but not the water provider. So we recommend that BOMA allow us to, that y'all allow us to have this contract put in place once the city administrator and the legal office have found a way to conclude it, when they're sign off on it.
So we're not reinventing anything, we're just applying a process we have elsewhere.
We have this process in
So-
3 other
Yeah.
relationships that benefit us, and this is a very small one that benefits.
So HB&TS, Mill Crofton, and Mallory Valley, we already have this?
They'll
Yes,
do that for
yes, sir.
us.
Move for approval, Mr. Chairman.
Proper motions, a second?
Second.
Any other discussion?
Yeah, I want to know what all that stuff is on our computer.
I can't see your computer.
She can't see it.
Well, you don't have one of these things?
It's,
I have a computer, but it's not like yours.
Well, do you know?
And I've been online to see what this was.
it's just information,
It's additional, it's Chinese.
it's marked out, is it not?
I don't know what it is, yeah.
The district has. So what I think we're doing is just changing all of that in there. Do you see what you see what you
It's your attachment, it's the attachment, it's just Chinese.
You know what
like-
it is?
I don't read that.
I was on a PC, I didn't see that.
I don't think it's Chinese.
Yeah.
It looks like gibberish.
You got the good one? We got?
This version as well.
You've got this one?
Can you read it?
Can you take a look?
Yeah, I can see this, but Vicky's is just fine.
How about that?
All righty.
I hope not.
Cartwright Creek.
You've got a
North Cartwright Creek. is-
motion and a second.
Yeah.
We've got,
Well, motion.
we have a motion second.
See, I don't know if we're voting on this stuff or not.
I'm voting on the legislative detail.
Yeah, we'll
Yeah.
work through that. Proper motion to the second, all in favor
Details.
indicate by saying aye. Gateway Village Public Water System Irrigation Submeter Agreement, City of Franklin, contract number 2015-001.
The city of Franklin allows people to install meters for water that is likely not to get into the wastewater plant, and we reduce their bill by that amount of, that volume. We don't charge them sewer charges for water that is either for irrigation or maybe for an HVAC chiller. We allow other water districts that have district-installed meters that are verifiable and properly installed meters to do the same thing. And that relationship we've maintained with the Mallory Valley Water District for years. Recently, Mallory Valley, we had contracts with 12 customers of Mallory Valley that we allowed to have a 5-year grandfather clause for water meters that they had installed, and that they could then go get a Mallory Valley installed water meter and continue that relationship to get an adjusted bill that they didn't pay for irrigation water. During that time period, Gateway Village was one of those, but they have subsequently become a utility district themselves. On June 6, 2013, they were notified by the state of Tennessee that they are now a utility district. And as such, they are doing the same things in a reporting and testing and verifiable meter recordings as Mallory Valley was, and they have asked that we extend them the same courtesy that we do another water district. We've passed this, run this by our administrative folks from the Assistant City Administrator's Office, from the Water Department, from the Engineer's Office, and everyone's in agreement that as a new water district, we should afford them the same courtesies. There's no,
Which is what?
which is that we will allow them an irrigation meter and not charge them for water that is registered on that irrigation meter as getting into the sewer system and charge them sewer. We will not charge them sewer for that water.
Where are they getting the water?
They're actually buying it from Mallory Valley, so we were taking 100% of the water they bought from Mallory Valley and charging them sewer for that water. They are taking a significant portion of their water and they're spraying it out on the grass. And we, for 5 years, have given them a credit for that, for a 5-year contract. And during that period of time, as the contract expired, they've come forward and said, hey, we're a utility district now. Would you please honor that same relationship that you maintained with Mallory Valley as a utility district? And our staff is recommending that we maintain that. There's no new cost to the city. We've been giving them the credit anyway. It's a reduction of their fees for water that they're not putting in our sewer system. They're putting it on their grass and maintaining their landscape.
So they wouldn't even get a bill from us?
They will get a bill for the water that goes into through the regular meter that is not out of the irrigation meters. They'll get a credit for the water that's used through irrigation meters.
All right.
There's a gross bill of all the water they consume, and we'll reduce it by their irrigation meter usage.
But I thought they were
They're our sewer customer,
Okay.
so they'll get a sewer bill from us.
So do we have the potential of adding more of these?
Yeah.
Systems.
How can we, we can't, I don't disagree with the thing about the sewer on the thing that's,
Well, we're
like
already- we're
if we have a
already doing
regular
that.
irrigation, if we have a regular irrigation meter just on somebody's house, then they don't get charged for the sewer.
If it's a city-installed irrigation meter,
Exactly,
you pay a tap
exactly.
fee, and
That's
you
right.
get a reduced rate, and you get a reduction in your sewer
But it's
bill.
real expensive, it's a real expensive meter.
There is a payback
Yes,
period,
yeah,
and it's
yeah.
more than a year.
Oh, yeah, I'd say a lot more. But the thing is, how did they get to be a a utility district? I mean, we would.
I don't think that's
we
part
would
of this
pay.
discussion.
We would pay to get a utility district out of some of those things that we would like to have.
It's my understanding that it was forced upon them, that they really weren't seeking to do that, but it put them in a position where they had to manage rates, they had to report to the state, they had to do budgets and projections and get approval of their structure. So it was forced upon them, and that's what they're doing.
Well, I think they had one master meter and they were
Exactly.
sub-selling.
Exactly.
None of that matters for this.
Yeah.
No, you're right, but that's the real reason. They never did individual meters, and also they told us that they were putting X pipe in there, and they did something different. But still,
Well,
those people up there are not happy with this.
It is a very unusual situation. But I think the purpose in bringing this is equal treatment. If we,
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, I agree.
This is.
So we would
And I
seek
think I
your
was just thinking a little
approval.
further on down, is there a possibility that this will happen? There will be other districts.
It'll be hard to replicate these particular circumstances. I think it's possible, but it's highly unlikely that anybody else is going to go through the regulatory
Right.
embrace of the state in order just to do this.
Gateway.
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 Oh, Gateway.
Yeah.
Franklin Road.
Move for approval.
Proper motion, second. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda, reclassification of 3 part-time sanitation and environmental services workers to 1 full-time sanitation and environmental service worker. Did we not, we did it, we approved the funding for that.
No,
Did we
that
not?
was in the BNS department. This is a recent request from Becky. It is a revenue-neutral request to take 3 vacant part-time positions that we have in our org chart and convert it to 1 full-time position. Becky, you want to tell them how it'll help you? This is going to help them with their scheduling under their new
10-hour day.
regime.
For
That's
10
right.
hours. We usually schedule folks for 28 hours a week. And what we've done is with our 4 10-hour days, it creates a situation where we have to bring those folks in 6 or 7 hours into the day, bring them back to the shop so that they can go home, get their hours in, but they're still considered part-time employees. We also have recognized some of our efficiencies have allowed us to run our routes a little bit less time than we originally expected. So what we would like to do is move 3 of the vacant part-time positions to 1 full-time position. And that doesn't displace anyone, it just allows us to hire one full-time position with benefits.
Well, what do you mean it doesn't replace anyone? If you've got 3 now and you're gonna have 1?
Well, they're vacant positions. There's no one in those. Yes, ma'am. There's, and it's been, with the economy as it turns around, there's been a challenge in finding folks that want to work part-time. I'm glad there are full-time opportunities for people out there.
But they're vacant anyway?
Yes, ma'am.
Sure. Well, I move for approval.
Second.
Proper motion second. Any other discussion? If not, all in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye.
We'll put that in the form of a resolution then and move it to the voting meeting. It'll be one of those resolutions to change the org chart
Okay.
without any financial consequence.
Item 14, discussion of audit firm selection RFP process.
This committee serves as the city's audit committee, and for the past 4 years, Dan Miller from Crossland Associates has come and made his presentation to you in December. And the contract was for a period of 4 years. And with that, that means it's time now to go back out for an RFP process. And I guess there's probably 2 things we wanted to discuss with the committee and just make sure that you are comfortable with that in the process. The first one was, we had this audit firm for 4 years. Prior to that, we had an audit firm for 5 years. Prior to that, we had an audit firm for 17, 18, 19 years. And the committee at that time felt that when we did that, that firm should not be part of the process and basically were excluded. When we did the second one after 5 years, they were allowed to make a proposal. So what we're recommending is that we allow Crossland to be eligible to submit a proposal just like any other eligible audit firms.
That's the last one.
That's the last one, yes. And the second item is what Russ had mentioned earlier about the county being comfortable that the city would submit the request for proposals for the conference center audit. And we just wanted to make sure, because we knew last year there was some question about how the county might want us to do that, and we knew that we had confirmed that they were okay with the city actually making those RFP requests.
Yeah, because it's a audit of a joint property, they preferred for us to just go ahead and do that. They're actually audited by the state auditors, and we have to go outside, get an independent CPA firm. So they're not accustomed to going through these RFP procedures. I think they'd prefer for us to do that. This is just for your information only. Unless you have an objection, we're going to go ahead with this RFP because the comptroller likes to see that awarded and the audit contracts done as early as possible.
Sounds good.
So just one question. The audit fee then is $47,500 to $49,000.
It was the last time. I mean, we won't know until we get the proposals in, but we request that in a number of different ways, either percentage increases each of the years or, are you quoting us a flat rate for the whole term, et cetera. We're just now starting that proposal process, so it'll be a month or so before we have knowledge of what the bids will be. I must say, though, while I've got an opportunity, what we pay for an audit is extremely favorable. Michael came in from the Northeast and looked at what we pay and almost choked on it.
Yeah, that is reasonable.
It's very reasonable, and we get a very good product for it.
Twice as much on average for a community that was half the size.
What I was using, I was asking that. I know.
Massachusetts, Boston.
I know what I was paying where I was.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
And the budget was 1%
Or maybe
of this right here.
maybe more than that.
Well, part of that is we do make it very easy for them. We have tons of information. We've got a lot of it electronic. It's always available on a timely basis. They know exactly what they're going to get when they get here as far as, they don't have to waste any time finding things. So this is a good audit client. We're a good audit client for anyone.
Okay.
Next item on the agenda, update of eligible lease purchases through Chase Bank.
Mr. Chairman, on this item, it basically goes back to the board for 2015 had approved a lease amount of $2.875 million. Of that portion, there was an amount of $468,000 that had not been allocated toward any particular item or project. Now that we've kind of gone halfway through the year, we'd like to maybe go ahead and identify eligible projects to use this amount. And the two projects we would like to maybe get a recommendation from this committee would be, first of all, fire vehicles. They had purchased 5 vehicles. It's currently right now to be paid outright, but we'd like to maybe change that to be paid by the lease.
Did you say fire or
Fire, but there are 5 vehicles in the fire department. Yes.
Fire and
So
fire.
both are right. And the second item is, and again, it's just being prepared. It's basically to have sufficient funding for the M4 and Kronos projects. And so basically this would take the $468,000 and allow these to be eligible purchases for or through the Chase Bank lease.
What was the second one?
The M4 and Kronos software.
Utility billing and the HR system.
So this leasing, that, we're saving money when we do that versus outright?
Well, you're never saving money, but if you
You
remember, we got
postpone
an
it.
interest rate that was slightly under 1%. And what that does is, even though we're paying 1%, you're able to spread the cost of it over a 3-year period and put it in the operating budget.
Right. Makes sense.
You want a recommendation?
If we could, to the full board.
Okay, well, I so moved.
Second.
Proper motion to second, all in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Last item on the agenda, monthly reports for January.
Well, as always, this is for your information only. I know we're running kind of tight on time today, so I won't go through item by item by item, but there's a lot of information in here. I would point out to you that we had another excellent sales tax report, property taxes on schedule. There's some additional information from the conference center that we got. I would point out that we've had a couple of less than satisfactory months of performance after the change of hands in the ownership. So my counterpart at the county and I went and met with the management out there to go over all the gory details. And some of it is the economic environment, some of it is the getting to know you period. They lost a lot of staff when the changeover happened. I don't know if they called you or not, but we asked them specifically to call Miss Margaret and talk about the service out there.
They didn't have to call me, I just could tell.
But what we found is that the prior owner didn't leave them a lot of information, and they had to build a lot of the spreadsheets from scratch in order to do it in the way that we asked them to do it. And they did get some double counting, some double charges on some of the months. There is a letter from the manager out there in your reports that in great detail goes into the things that he talked to Nina Graham of the county and myself about. We asked him to quarterly give us a letter similar to that to keep us updated on the changes. He does think there'll be some pretty dramatic improvement, but he says it's probably going to be spring before it gets there because they're struggling to hire people and they're struggling to get all of their systems up in the way that they want to run that. So, you know, a lot of it is when you have a mass exodus of people, a lot of the intellectual history goes with it. And they had a lot of people that were brand new. And they're just going through the shakedown cruise of running a big hotel. So I think they will get better. He's, you know, Michael Sanders is his name. He's very sincere. He's got a lot of experience. He certainly has the backing of a very strong organization behind him. So I have no doubt that they will be successful. It's just a question of when. The last couple of months have been improvements, though, I will say. And some of that is because some of the double counting, there were some corrections and offsets to that. That's what I would tell you about the conference center. Not much to tell you about the other reports, except perhaps you're interested in the fuel hedging. Again, the collapse of the price, you know.
Good and bad.
I'll say, hooray, we're losing money
That's
again.
right.
Because, you know, for every 50 cents we lose on the hedge, we're
Somebody's
making
sales
3
tax.
times that
That's right.
back at the pump, so.
And the man got killed. Head. Did he get killed by his son?
What's that?
I'm lost, I'm
I
sorry.
am too.
Never mind.
Okay.
So,
But
Um,
doesn't that also convert to maybe sales tax increase? I mean,
Oh, I think
Yeah.
absolutely,
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
going to be,
Yeah.
I think that's why we're getting 9 and 10% year-over-year
Yeah.
increases, very frankly. But it does put us into somewhat of a dilemma in that, you know, you now have sub-$50 per barrel oil prices. So, you know, are you feeling lucky today? You know, this is one of the circumstances where logic would tell you to go out and lock in while the prices are this low, the next year's worth of fuel and go ahead and hedge that, because I don't believe it's going to stay at this level. I mean, I think it's going to bounce back. I think the markets have overcompensated for a lot of reasons. Everybody is more afraid of a slowdown globally than there is. You know, there are a lot of reasons that the price is down. It's politics, it's economic forecast, it's China, it's supply and demand.
It's fracking.
Sanctions.
It's fracking.
yeah. So would you be interested in re-looking at our hedging contract?
Well, we're locked in for the balance of this year, but what we would do is to look at hedging the entire fiscal 16 year, particularly on diesel, because at the wholesale level, you know, you watch the price of oil, but at the wholesale level, the diesel prices come down even more than the gasoline price. And even though we don't use that much diesel anymore, now that we're not hauling to a landfill, it still is a factor for a lot of our vehicles, particularly in the fire department. So that may be something that we want to do and take advantage of this market. I do want to let you know that, you know, Metro Nashville is the lead, and we are an interlocal partner with them. And, you know, I don't know, they're going to have an election next year, and I don't know if the new mayor will continue to keep the finance team that they have up there now. So one of the things that we're trying to do is some succession planning and some policy formulation to institutionalize this particular program in a way where whoever steps into those shoes on the Metro end will be able to continue this program. So one of the things that we did also because of the Dodd-Frank rules is we now have to have an advisor, an independent advisor, where we had been using a bank as both an advisor and a broker, if you will. We now have to separate that. So we've contracted with a new advisor, a Texas firm, to be the advisor on this, and they will not bid on any of the transactions. They will act as our agent to go out and broker this.
You've already hired them.
Metro has already hired them.
Oh.
And we are part of that agreement, so effectively we have as well. But we have not instituted any trades with them yet. But within the next couple of weeks, we're going to have some decisions to make on that, and I'll do everything I can to keep you posted on that. You know, we're kind of the tail of the dog on that. If Metro, which is 90% of this program, does something, you know, the only way that we can extract ourselves from it is choose not to lower our hedging amount. And I'm really not inclined to do that at this point. But I'll try to keep you posted as best I can. And we're working on a policy to cover the trades and how we go about it and establish procedures. And even though it would be their policy, we would like to have a policy that emulates that we more or less adopted the same way. So we'll be working on that over the next month.
We've got two very brief things. You know, I think on the work session, we'll have paying some money for Hillsborough Road to, purchasing, should I say, purchasing right-of-way for the, from the Williams,
School.
from the school, let us think about using the Williamson County Facilities Tax for that, because you remember, this is a separate, it's not our facilities tax, but the Williamson County Facilities Tax, and they were talking about using that for education.
It's not a one-time thing.
No, it is every month we get some in. Oh, but the thing that we'd be spending would be a one-time thing.
One-time.
But it's just a thought on that. Okay.
Well, you know, we try to spend on our capital projects out of the 310 Capital Projects Fund. And that particular revenue source that you mentioned goes into that fund every
Okay.
month. So it is there, and so when the project comes along, all we have to do is allocate
Okay.
it as such.
Good. I think that,
Is that $1 million?
oh gosh.
Well,
that
it
guy-
was at one time. I think it's less than that
It
because we
is.
had all the
Oh.
Wilson Pike expenditures.
Which was kind of school-related, if you stop and think about it. The other thing is, the transit this month's salaries was just huge, because they're a lot low, I mean, you know, they're kind of under, they're in the red, I guess you'd say, right now, but it was real sharp. But I don't know anything about it, I'm just saying, might be, not to look at it and
Something
everything.
to check up on.
Yeah, and the other thing is, their fares were down, and I wondered if that had anything to do with the low oil, the gas
What?
price. Their transit fares were down, and I wondered if that had anything to do with the low gas prices, and maybe people were just using their own vehicles. I don't know what that was, but anyway, just something to look at, not a big thing to us, you know, and everything.
Which of the months is transit scheduled to come?
See, I don't know. Oh, you mean to come up for the other thing? It's just something to look at.
I was going to say, I think they're yeah, there are some things like that. I wouldn't think that salaries would be one of those.
But it said salaries,
Yeah.
but that might have had something to do with
It-
insurance for salaries.
It could have been.
March.
It's March, okay. So the second Thursday in March, you will see the proposal from Transit. They'll be here to discuss that. And that's probably a good time to talk about at least all of the revenue items. I thought they were a little earlier this year. So that's, Mr. Chairman, all I have.
Does anyone have anything else? Then I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Bless you, bless you.
I've never gotten a sneeze.
That's the sneeziest second I've ever heard.